Mark Pope and the Kentucky Wildcats are trying to lock down the number one overall player in the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be discussing the transfer portal. That's right, Kentucky basketball going after a number of high-profile prospects. A couple of them have either already visited or are currently on visit with Kentucky. One of them, Mark Pope, actually flew out to visit, and that's who we'll start with on today's episode. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Kentucky basketball going after a number of guys, but I've got three here I want to talk about today, starting with Yaxel Lendeborg. He is a phenomenal, and I mean phenomenal player out of UAB. There were some rumors this past offseason that Yaxel would enter the transfer portal. It didn't happen. He stayed with the Blazers for one more year, and here he is now entering the transfer portal as a senior. 17.7 points per game, 11.4 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 1.7 steals, 1.8 blocks, shooting 52% from the floor, 35.7% from deep. This is a pure stretch four with a 127.5 offensive rating. This is the best overall player in the transfer portal, and Kentucky is the only team so far to have reached out to this kid, and if I'm not mistaken, actually see him in person. Kentucky's the only team to actually go and actually talk to this kid in person. In fact, Mark Pope earlier this week flew out to Chicago late one night to go actually meet this kid. And look, if Mark Pope is going out there flying all over the country, trying to do work to land a transfer portal player, there's a very good chance he is very interested in him and he's going to get him. So what do we know about this pure stretch four, this extremely talented player out of UAB? Well, first and foremost, I think that he is somebody that does some crazy work in transition. He's an athletic, fluid ball handler, shoots 68% at the rim, which is over half of his field goal attempts, a big-bodied four that can get to the rim with ease, and he is a flyer in transition. So smooth for his size. Again, 6'9", 230 pounds. This is what you're getting here out of Yaxel. Somebody that can handle the ball and just glides to the rim at various points, it feels like. His shooting overall is not phenomenal once you get beyond the rim, but it's not inefficient, especially for a 6'9", 230-pound player. He shoots 33% at the right elbow, which is 12% of his field goal attempts. He shoots 32% at the right baseline, which is 9% of his field goal attempts, and 31% right above the break three, which is 9% of his field goal attempts. You go and actually watch some of this kid's highlights, and you'll realize that, yes, he's not the most efficient player, and that's not to say he isn't, by the way. He's, I think, statistically average when it comes to shooting, or slightly above it in a variety of areas. But when it comes to how he gets his points, he does a little bit of everything, and we'll start to see that here as we continue to break his numbers down. Outside of his scoring, this kid's a very, very good offensive rebounder, just big-bodied and physical down low. He's got a 24% assist rate, which I know Mark Pope probably loves. This kid is a great passer. You saw those 4+ assists I mentioned earlier. He also blocks shots, 5.7% block rate. So he scores everywhere. He rebounds, he passes the ball, he blocks shots, he protects the rim. This is an all-around pure stretch four that I think Kentucky would kill to have on their roster next season. The only weakness, and this is what's pointed out in one of his highlight reels on YouTube, is his off-the-dribble shooting. He's shooting 37% effective field goal percentage on off-the-dribble shots, which is in the 19th percentile, of course. Of course, this is what Mark Pope is going after. This is not something that you see, at least you didn't see, rather, out of the transfer portal last offseason. You didn't see Mark Pope going after a ton of guys that could create their own shot. You saw guys that were primarily spot up and catch and shoot guys, and you start to see that with Yaxel Lendeborg here. 47th percentile of spot up scores, 84th percentile of putback scores. He scores 15% of his points on putbacks as opposed to 16% of his points on spot up. He gets 13% of his points in transition. He's in the 88th percentile of transition scores. Again, this kid is a monster running the floor very, very well with or without the ball. That's something I wanted to write down here and mention to you guys. This kid runs the floor so well with or without the ball in his hands. So you see the balance there. Spot up, put back, transition. He's also getting 12% of his points from post-ups. He's in the 71st percentile there. So he's extremely well-rounded when it comes to how/where he scores. And I think the problem here is efficiency and shot creation outside of the paint, which when you start to think about what this could look like in a Kentucky system, in a Mark Pope 5-out system with the bigs being so heavily involved, passing and doing all these different things, I don't necessarily think that will be an issue at Kentucky as far as efficiency and shot creation goes. I think he's going to have stuff open up to him. An addition like this, if you get it, I think would take a ton of pressure off your young guards. Jasper Johnson, a Caden Lewis, maybe Otega Owe at various points that can allow him to do some more things off ball. An addition like this would, I think, start to alleviate maybe some of your woes on offense from a season ago. You get somebody more physical. You get somebody on defense that can protect the rim. You get somebody that can actually give you second chance opportunities, which Yaxel seems to do in spades there during his time with the Blazers. 45th percentile of ISO scores, by the way. He gets 9% of his points there. So well-rounded, so versatile. And just top-of-the-line stats here. And when you go and actually watch him, you understand why he is currently the most coveted player in the transfer portal. I would love to have this kid. Kentucky is the only team so far to have actually gone and seen this kid in person, if I'm not mistaken. According to Joe Tipton, apparently Yaxel wants to make a decision by the end of the week, and the dead period starts tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes. I may end up recording another Locked On Kentucky here later tonight if he does end up somehow committing. We've got two more players we want to get to here, talking about Kentucky basketball in the transfer portal. Before we continue that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at SupplyHouse. You can get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades. SupplyHouse, whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, SupplyHouse is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need. It's delivered fast from coast to coast. And if you need help with an order, SupplyHouse offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, so now it's your turn. You can join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's all over at supplyhouse.com. All right, continuing along here on the Wednesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. I really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. This has been an extremely chaotic 2.5 weeks for me. A lot of things kind of gone awry. I was, you know what, we won't get into it. We won't get to it. Let's just say I was pretty sure my camera was broken about 20 minutes ago, and yet we keep it pushing. We've got two more transfer portal players to talk about here today, and one of them just took a visit to Kentucky, and that is Taylor Bowen. Talk about Kentucky getting active in the front court in the transfer portal. Bowen was a 4-star prospect coming out of high school, has spent the last 2 seasons at Florida State, 6'10", 205 pounds, and gentlemen, this is another extremely versatile piece that Kentucky could add to their roster if they were able to land him. Again, he was hosted yesterday. 107.1 offensive rating, hybrid guy that has a ton of athleticism. Something that Kentucky, I think, is prioritizing this offseason is athleticism. Guys that can really get out with speed, get up, throw it down, grab rebounds, etc. Whatever it may be, the little technical things. You need to have somebody that's either got some muscle, some hops, or some length that can go out with some speed and get things done. And Bowen at 6'10", 205 is a little bit more wiry, but this is an insane wingspan that's on this young man. Incredibly mobile for his size, thrives in transition just as well as Lendeborg does as well. Take a look at some of the stats here. You'll start to see why this sophomore forward is so coveted in the portal. He averaged 8 points per game, 5.2 rebounds, a steal per game, 1.5 blocks per game, while shooting 47% from the floor and 41.4% from three. He shoots 57% at the rim, which is 40% of his field goal attempts. And you start to see kind of the work that this kid does in transition, both with and without the ball. Very similar to Yaxel in the fact that he can get up and down the court, and he can throw it down. He can also grab second chance opportunities. And the big thing for him that's kind of developed over the last season is his ability to shoot the three. In his first season in college, he was shooting just 21.2% from beyond the arc. This season, 41.4%. He shot 35% on left wing threes, which was 15% of his field goal attempts. He shot 45% on right wing threes, which was 13% of his field goal attempts. And he was in the 84th percentile of catch and shoot shooters. He had a 59% effective field goal percentage there. Really, really, really good this past year as a catch and shoot spot up type guy. He's got a bit of a slow release that starts low, but it goes in. It's a high arcing shot. Whenever you get him in transition, I think he has the ball up a little bit higher, which allows him to shoot a little bit quicker. I like it. I like what this kid brings to the floor. You also get some block shots here, 7.2% block rate. Again, spot-up guy, 60th percentile of spot-up scorers, 35% of his points come from that. He's in the 50th percentile of transition scores at 22%, but I feel like with Kentucky, I think this kid could do a lot more damage. 33rd percentile of putback scores. He gets 8% of its points there, and 35th percentile post-up scores. Again, a little bit wiry, but somebody that I think Kentucky could make into a pure four. And this is what we wanted to kind of touch on here today outside of the three guys, is what exactly does Kentucky want in the transfer portal? Not necessarily in terms of athleticism. We already covered that, but I think it's pretty obvious Kentucky needs to do work in their front court. They're not going to bring back a single four on this roster this upcoming season. So the question is, what do you go and get in the portal? And obviously you've got Bowen, you've got Lendeborg here out of UAB. You would like to have both of them, if not get one of them alongside another really high profile power forward type guy. But I think it's abundantly clear Kentucky needs more physicality and more rim protection here in the front court. And you can get that with Yaxel. You can get that with Bowen. It's a shame what happened with Dawe. We didn't even get a chance to talk about him on the show because I was out in Dallas with Locked On, just going all over the place here. But yeah, Bowen, I think, could be that Dawe replacement, I guess, if you obviously weren't able to get Dawe, who has announced that he is returning to San Diego State. I think that this would be a great pickup. Would this be a starter? I don't know if it would be because of his wiry frame. And if you don't get Bowen, you maybe want to go after a little bit more muscle, which Kentucky is also looking at. In fact, as of this recording, this former five-star is still on campus. We'll talk about McKenzie Mgbako here in just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Monarch Money. Monarch Money is an incredible place to go whenever you need to keep track of all of your finances. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered where exactly did all of your money go between dining out, going out, shopping, entertainment? It's so easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, spending. It's all in one place, so you can stop just managing your money, and you can start building your wealth. You can take control of your finances at Monarch Money. You can use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, wrapping up the Wednesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. I thank you guys so much for tuning in to the show. Again, if you've not subscribed, I would love to have you. This has been just a crazy season, one of my favorites, if not my favorite, to have covered. It's a shame that it's over, but now we are waiting into the offseason with Kentucky trying to do some work in the transfer portal. Already landed the Tulane transfer Cam Williams, who you talk about adding more athleticism in your front court. The 6'8" wing out of Tulane, he's got that in spades. He is a very young prospect, somebody that I expect to be on Kentucky's roster for multiple years. NBA upside, one of the best catch and shoot players in the entire country at 6'8". He is exactly what Mark Pope was going after, and I'm so excited to dive into him and as well as other players that Kentucky gets in the portal more as we kind of wade deeper here into the offseason. But first, we've got to talk about one more player that's currently on campus, and it's a former 5-star coming out of Indiana that I think has some positives and some negatives here to him, and I'm going to try and be as honest and transparent as possible. Look, if we land this kid, awesome, but there's going to have to be some work done on his game in order to make him as valuable of an asset as he could possibly be, and that's McKenzie Mgbako, the 5-star power forward out of Indiana, 6'10", 220 pounds. I'm going to read his scouting report. First from his time in high school. This is what Adam Finkelstein of 24/7 Sports had to say about him before he made it to college. His shot making from behind the arc is his best asset. He can also make the types of shots that translate to the next level. Pick and pop threes, slipping out of ball screens to make shots on the move, or creating space with a series of sidestep or step back shots. The mid post has been a long staple of his individual offense, but he's now getting some easy points by moving without the ball more freely. Physically, Mgbako appears to be in the best shape of his career to date and was also productive enough on the glass to hold his own at the 4. His swing skills are his defensive versatility and shot creation abilities, both of which are rooted in his mobility, foot speed, and ability to play low to the ground when necessary. If those two areas develop, both his versatility and overall projection will go to new levels. I would not say that this is the most efficient shooter on the planet. In fact, I would say that he's got work to do there. But he's incredibly versatile, both on offense and defense. And here's the interesting thing to me. He was the 4th worst defender on the Hoosiers roster. He had a 107.6 defensive rating, which some of you listening may immediately run to the YouTube comments and say, yeah, Lance, we actually don't want this kid because of that. That would have been the 4th best on Kentucky's team last year. 4th worst for the Hoosiers, who missed the NCAA tournament, would have been 4th best for Kentucky, who ended up being a 3 seed that made it to the Sweet 16. If you add that defense to your roster with some offensive upside, former 5-star, you see in his tape, I think that is a very good potential addition. He shot 59% at the rim, which was a third of his field goal attempts. You see why he's a 5-star, former 5-star. He's got some muscle to him. He's got some athleticism. The outside shooting, though, as Adam Finkelstein noted, was his greatest asset, and he's not shot the ball very well so far here in college. Shooting this past season, just 32.9% from 3. By the way, he averaged 12.2 points, 4.6 rebounds, one assist, and half a block per game while shooting 43% from the floor. Very well, very, very good at the rim, but 26% shooting on left wing threes. The shot form's not bad. It is not a bad shot form at all, especially for a guy that's 6'9". I think it's good. It's just the ball's just not going in the hole. I think he shoots some things probably a little too strong at times. 26% on left break threes, 37% on left corner threes. So you get him deeper into the corner, he becomes more efficient. Obviously, I think that's the case for a lot of shooters. 35% on right wing threes, 11% of his field goal attempts, more efficient there. The weakness, go figure, you can guess it. 40% effective field goal percentage off the dribble. That's in the 28th percentile of scores. That is not good. But you start to realize this is an off-ball type player. 39th percentile of spot-up scores, 49th percentile of transition scores. He gets over 50% of his points from spot-up or transition combined. If he was a better shooter, if he was a more efficient shooter, he'd be much higher, which I think, again, you look at what Kentucky did to guys like Lamont Butler this past season. You look at what they did for Jackson Robinson, creating shots for them. I'm just saying, I think Mgbako could be on a very, very steady trajectory towards the top of Kentucky shooting next season if he were to be added. I think that he could make a dramatic leap there and be extremely valuable. He's in the 83rd percentile of off-ball screen scores. He gets only 9% of his points from off-ball screens, but it's 1.24 points per possession, which is really high compared to some of the other numbers on here. If you give him an inch, if you create something off-ball for him, he's a good scorer. You will probably see that exclusively in the Mark Pope offense for the majority of the season. It will be mostly get this kid to create a shot off ball, and he's going to knock it down. Versatile, fluid, not a good defender for Indiana, would be a phenomenal defender for Kentucky. Good at the rim, needs to work on his outside shot. If he's able to fix that outside shot, he would be great. He would be so good with somebody like Yaxel. I think that he would be a good addition. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Kentucky going after Yaxel Lendeborg, also Taylor Bowen and McKenzie Mgbako. Some players here that Kentucky's going after that have either visited or have been visited by Mark Pope and company. And we'll see what happens here tonight. Got a lot of movement happening in the transfer portal and so many other players we've not talked to. Look, if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. You can hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.